We think reading great Christian books is vital for spiritual growth, so we are asking significant Christian leaders which 3 books have changed their lives. Bob Hartman is a performance storyteller who's been entertaining audiences on both sides of the Atlantic for over 15 years. Bob's books and performance bring together retellings of Bible stories and traditional tales from around the world. His books are full of humour and insights, whilst his storytelling sessions are exciting, engaging, dynamic and above all interactive. He's well known for his hugely popular Lion Storyteller books.
The Lion Storyteller book of parables. It's an interactive retelling of Jesus' parables. So it's for late key stage 1, early key stage 2, and what you do is you invite the child into the parables. There's devices in the back for bringing it to life. It's for parents, teachers, Sunday school teachers. It's a way of inviting them to tell the story with you, not just tell the story to them. The Magician's Nephew is one of my favorite books. When I was a boy, 6th grade, my 6th grade teacher, he closed the curtains and he turned down the lights and he reached behind his desk and he pulled out a copy of The Magician's Nephew. And he read it to us, just day after day. I'd never heard any of the Chronicles of Narnia before. I know a lot of people like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, but for me, it's that lovely picture of Aslan and the creation of the world and the singing of creation into being that's just absolutely gorgeous. It just blew me away. And for me, it just kind of created that imaginative structure that has just stuck with me the whole of my life. It's one of the books that's inspired me to write. Yeah. Frederick Buechner's Telling the Truth, The Gospel is Tragedy, Comedy, and Fairy Tale is a book that just changed the whole way I thought about preaching. I was an English major before I was called to ministry. And in seminary, I stumbled across the book. It was the Yale Lectures for 1975. Buechner had been a novelist himself. And in that book, he basically sets out a way to communicate the gospel that draws in everything that has to do with telling a good story. And so he says the gospel is first of all tragedy. We have to recognize the fallenness of the world. And then it's comedy because God speaks his joy and his beauty into this world. But he says it's also the truest fairy tale of all. It's not like the Wizard of Oz, he says. There's no man behind a curtain pulling strings because God does for us what we could never have done for ourselves. The thing I love about Hopkins is not only the fact that he more or less invented a new way of poetry, and it wasn't just that he manages to capture God's grandeur. I mean, the beauty of God shot through the world in language that just bounces and resounds and plays with language in a way that nobody had done before him. It's his story itself, because Hopkins never knew the influence that he had. He was a priest who had a hard life being a priest and who always wrestled with the two vocations. Am I a poet or am I a priest? His work was, with a few exceptions, never published in his life. And it was only because his friend Robert Bridges, who was the poet laureate, actually got the stuff published that anybody even knows who he is. But he never realized the impact that he made. And for me as a writer, I think it just speaks a lot about the virtue of just doing it because you love it and because it's the thing God's called you to do. I write because I was a reader first. Kids in schools always ask me, why do you write? And I say, because when I was a kid, I read. And I love to read, and I still love to read. It changes me, and it moves me, and it inspires me. And that happened when I was a kid. It happens now. And so you want to do the same thing. It's kind of like if you're a football fan, and you love a particular team and a particular player, and you say to yourself, one day I want to be able to play like that. Well, I think there's the same connection between reading and writing. So for me, the reading is the thing that just kind of sparks me and inspires me and kind of gets me going, and it always has done.
I have 3 fantastic books to recommend to you, and the first is A Church for the Poor, Transforming the Church to Reach the Poor in Britain Today by Martin Charlesworth and Natalie Williams. Martin and Natalie are fantastic leaders who have been serving God by activating the church into the ministry amongst the poor. And they've been doing that with such a passion over the years. And this book is the distilled wisdom of all of their efforts. It's excellent and it comes highly recommended. Chris Mould, who's the head of Trust Will Trust, the Food Bank Network, he says this: when it comes to social transformation, nothing carries more potential than the local church. But so often we fall short. This brilliant and ruggedly practical book could make all the difference. The second is a book by Tim Keller. They're called Ministries of Mercy, Learning to Care Like Jesus. I read this book many years ago when it first came out in America, and it changed my mind. When I first read it, I didn't believe it was possible to be a conservative evangelical and passionate about justice and mercy. But Tim, using brilliant biblical exposition, shows us that actually it's at the heart of the gospel to care for those that are most needy. This is a brand new edition for the UK audience, well worth a read. The final book is called Every Job a Parable, What Farmers, Nurses and Astronauts Tell Us About God. And it's written by John Van Sloten. If you've ever walked into your workplace and wondered, Lord, what am I doing here? This is the book that you need to read. John Van Sloten is a church leader from America, and he's a really courageous guy. When he heard that Metallica were coming to play a concert in his town, he phoned up the band's management and invited them all to come to church, and they did. In fact, he wrote a book about it. It's called When Metallica Came to Church. But this book is the one that you need to read right now if you want to find out how to serve God in your workplace. Thanks for joining us at Books for Life. Please visit our website, booksforlife.uk. We've got an exclusive interview with Tim Keller talking about ministries of mercy. Look forward to seeing you next time.